22 years, the arm of justice, two more, building a bridge behind him. Now, a name carries the mission forward, beyond the Brotherhood. Literal, a 501c3 doing essential work, funding it, staffing it, running it as an executive director with a broader cohort. The Brotherhood never stopped at the trident, one that keeps expanding and one that keeps operating, one individual at a time. Drew Forsberg lives in both meanings. That's better. Walk-worthy. Drew?
Miles.
Man, it's great to have you here. I appreciate you making the time and coming in live from Hawaii. I wish I was there with you. Better than DC.
Yeah, life is good out here in paradise. I'm not going to lie. I got to wake up a little bit earlier than a lot of people to get in my business hours, but that's the price for living in paradise.
You know, I was going to ask, those business hours start on a surfboard or start collecting the chickens in the front yard or start with homeschool, but we'll put a pin in that until we get into the pod a little deeper.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. Time is valuable, so I need to start with my manners and thank you and thank those that you represent, past, present, and future, for joining us today. Your story is deeply important, and you come referred to us from Bill, so we're going to give him a big shout out at the end of the podcast as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you, man. Signature question stack. It's 3-part. Take it any way you want. I'm going to ask, who are you? Who have you been? And I think most importantly, who are you becoming?
All right. First and foremost, who am I? I am a Christ follower. I'm a retired Navy SEAL after 22 years in the military. That was my entire career. I retired 2 years ago, and my last billet in the military was in Hawaii. 19 years in San Diego, 3 in Hawaii. Poor me. Navy was just awful for me, duty stations. But at the 22-year mark, I decided to retire, and me and my wife really loved Hawaii. We're up here on the North Shore. We've got 4 homeschool kids. Oldest is 14, then another girl, 12, and then 2 boys that are now 9 and 10. And they run around barefoot, 365. We spend a lot of time at the beach. We've got the backyard chickens, the papayas, the guava trees, and all that kind of stuff in our very small home. I'm kind of like farming our tiny little yard here. And so now I'm a full-time dad, stay at home, get to work remote. I get to steward a very important mission for Beyond the Brotherhood for my teammates. And I'm learning how to be, a better father now that I'm around a whole lot more and I get to appreciate everything. So that's who I am now. Who I've been, I grew up in a small town, Montauk, Long Island. It's at the very eastern tip, small town, no stoplights. My family were all fishermen, multi-generation fishermen. So I grew up on the water a lot. By the time I was 6, I was on a 3-day trip in the late spring, cold weather, cod fishing for days at a time and no land around me. So I spent a lot of time on boats and on the water. Then in my teenage years, became a surfer. So that was my next identity. That was everything that I wanted to do. I wasn't really an athlete. I didn't like sports. If you got me around a ball to this day, I'm kind of a soup sandwich. But I really identified with getting in the water, continuing my waterman roots there, and surfing became my life's passion. So when I graduated high school, I was like, I want to go to college in California. Community college sounds like a great way to start. It's budget friendly, for the parents. So community college, 1 year at Santa Barbara, found out that the waves were better in Santa Cruz. I was doing surf contests in high school, and one of my surf buddies in the contest, he was up there and he was like, bro, waves are way better up here. So I moved up there the second year. My brother was just a year behind me in school. So when he graduated high school, I was like, you need to come to Santa Cruz with me. So we went to community college out there, and we planned to take a fall off. This is the fall of 2001. We were just going to do some more surfing, go to Costa Rica, do some extra tuna fishing out there in Montauk. But that's the fall where September 11th happened. Swell was up on September 11th. We were taking a ferry ride out to a secret surf spot, and we watched the towers fall on a little tiny VHF antenna TV. And while the surf was great, I couldn't help but feel for the rest of the day my life was going to change. I was a 20-year-old able-bodied American male, so I knew I had a duty to go serve my country. I knew we were going to war, and I wanted to get as closest to the fight as possible. The swell stayed up for like a good solid week. And so as soon as the swell ended, I drove up to a town called Riverhead, the closest recruiter. It's about an hour away from Montauk, and walked in there and I was like, hey man, I want to go serve my country. And they said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, man. I watched this movie when I was like 9 with Charlie Sheen in it. Can I go do something like that? And of course, I was in the Navy recruiter's office because I was like, well, I spent my life on boats and on the water, so this seems like a natural fit. So when I asked about the SEAL program, he was like, yeah, that's totally doable. We'll get you lined up. You'll sign a contract and you'll go straight to SEAL training after boot camp. And I was like, really? I don't have to like be on a ship or something first? And he was like, nope. As a matter of fact, the SEAL teams don't want that. They would prefer guys like yourself come straight off the street, go straight to buds, and that's how you spend your career. So I was like all in on where do I sign? I'm not exactly ready yet. I know this is hard. I've seen a couple of videos. So he gave me a good solid 6 months. I still continued to do a lot of surfing. Me and my brother took a trip to Costa Rica, and before and between surf sessions, I was doing a lot of push-ups, running, squats, pull-ups, anything I could find out on the beach to get myself ready. And then February 2002, just 6 months after the big event on 9/11, I was in boot camp, and he maintained his word. I know not every recruiter is the same, but I went straight to SEAL training pretty much right after boot camp. And by the grace of God, I made it through with my original class 243. No issues, no stumbles. I was not a star performer, but I didn't get held back. I didn't quit. And I was able to make it through. And I checked into SEAL Team 5 in November 2003. It's a full year and a half of training from the time you enter the Navy without any kind of hiccups, without any kind of setbacks, medical issues, things like that hold guys up. It's still going to take you about a year and a half just to get to your SEAL team. And then when you get to your SEAL team, you're training with your platoon, a 16-man team, for the next year and a half. So I'm doing 3 years of training before I finally go overseas for the first time. But that was who I was. I was a fisherman to a surfer to somebody who just wanted to serve my country and get as close to the fight as possible, and happened to just remember the right movie that I watched as a kid.
That's epic. And I have to assume that once a fisherman, always a fisherman, once a surfer, always a surfer. And so that's got to play out so nicely in Hawaii where you're living right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I'll tell you what, when I get around my brother, cousin, my dad, uncle, who are like lifetime fishermen, I feel like a total Guggen. I'm like, hey, can you set my rod up? Because I forgot like what kind of loop are we using? And so they always help me up. I can catch fish, but that's about all I can do. When they're like reading bottom finders and all that other kind of stuff, they are fishermen. I just know how to hold a pole and reel something in.
Yeah, Drew, thank you. I'd like to give you a little feedback, some desk side research here on who you've been, and a brief conversation with you before the recording. Clearly, you are a chief warrant officer. So that is a subject matter expert for those that aren't familiar with it. And that carries a highly specialized skill set and ability to speak to both enlisted and officers in a unique way. So that's a level of gravity and technical performance that's quite important. And I think that's an attribute to how you've applied yourself. So thank you. But as a person, I recognize you as one of great humility. And you prefer to refer to the teams opposed to the trident per se. You've talked about that publicly. And beneath that, I view you as a teacher, whether it's to the children or the broader community. I think regenerative farming, the gospel, being a patriot, I think that all fits in really nicely with the conversation that we're going to have today. The thing that struck me most uniquely is your thesis. My opinion, my language, not yours, but a thesis that I've gleaned from researching you is that identity is not a symbol or a title, but it's the values that you espouse and how you conduct and carry yourself. And I recognize and feel that words have meaning, and I appreciate how you carry that forward. So thank you. And so for that reason, I want to ask 2 additional questions. Drew, what change do you seek to make?
The change I seek to make now is helping guys understand that they did a lot more in the SEAL teams than just shoot guns, jump out airplanes, and blow stuff up. We did that, and we got really good at it. But they don't even understand that while they were doing that, and that's the whole reason that we signed up in the first place, a lot of our career is also spent supporting the guys to go do that. So when you go to a SEAL team, you're going to do a deployment with your platoon, and then you're going to come back and do another one. You owe 4 years at the team and 2 operational deployments. And then usually after that, they're like, all right, man, what do you want to do next? And of course, the answer is, I want to go do another one. And they're like, well, yes, but while you were going through training as a SEAL in the team with your platoon, somebody else was setting up that training. And that was called, the training detachment. These are other SEALs that have done operational deployments. They had to step offline, set up training. We need you to go step up and train others. So that's not just for Drew Forsberg. That's very typical for any enlisted man's career. You come in, you get to do your 2 platoons. Maybe you get allowed to do a third, but often they're going to say, hey, the rest of the machine needs experienced SEALs. So whether that's training SEALs for their deployments or training trainees who are coming into SEAL training, and then other billets out there, we need you to step back. We have enough operators. We need proven operators to help train others. So that was an interesting perspective for me. I just wanted to go serve my country and go operate. And I think a lot of the guys want to do the same thing. All right, but we've all had to take time offline, off the operator time. I'm setting up, how many bullets are we getting? How many trucks do we need to get? What kind of planes are we using? What's the schedule going to be? How do we communicate it out so that when the guys show up to train, all they have to worry about is training? And you have guys set aside to do all the other back end stuff to support them. So what I want our guys to know is when you get out, you weren't just doing SEAL operator things. You had your hand in logistics, budgets, hiring, firing civilians, all kinds of experience that will lend itself to the corporate world that you don't even realize you have. And then on the same token, explaining that and communicating that to business leaders out there. Yes, they know that SEALs are really good at blowing stuff up, shooting guns, and jumping out of airplanes. They know that we're good at what we do. They don't understand all the experience that guys also bring to the table aside from just being an operator. That's what I'm trying to get accomplished now, is help communicate that out.
Yeah, thank you. I want to come back to that, put a pin in it in more detail, because you're touching on beyond the Brotherhood and a lot of the work you're doing to help people transition from service to civilian and the skill build and internships that come about with that. So I recognize the change that you're trying to make is better, better than yesterday, better for tomorrow, and that's for the collective us, you, me, we, all of us. So very much appreciate that. I also recognize that you're one that created a precedent, and I'd like to create a little bit of a foundation, a flooring for this conversation, and turn the clock back to First Liberty Institute class action lawsuit, U.S. Navy v. Biden. If you could speak very briefly what that was about, because I think that speaks to the values and convictions that you carry forward, and then we'll jump forward into perhaps your healing and what came after that.
Yeah, you know what? I might actually have to explain a little bit further back in the background, but to get right to the point, what happened was in 2021, a good full year plus after COVID started, there was the vaccine mandate in that late August, September area. And I was under conviction from the very beginning of COVID that this was not what it was being foretold on the media. I spent the whole career in the SEAL teams, and part of my last career was understanding psychological operations, influence operations, and there was just too many red flags from the get-go. And I immediately saw this infringement coming on our individual rights. So for instance, COVID happened in March 2020. By June 2020, just a couple of months later, the Navy released an order called a NAV admin that said, hey, if you are in the Navy and you live in the continental United States, you are not allowed to go to restaurants, public beaches, parks, religious services, all kinds of things of what you could not do. And suspiciously missing from that list was also protests. So I was like, this isn't even First Amendment neutral. And this is during all the, George Floyd protests and everything else. So that was a major red flag. Like, okay, they're not looking out for the betterment of the public good. They're specifically lining out things that I can't do in the military, to include religious services. And this was an opportunity for me to teach my kids, like, hey, we do devotions every night. We read our Bible. I'm teaching them stories. And I was like, hey, guys, you remember when in the book of Acts, and they said, hey, you need to stop preaching? And they said, we're not here to obey man. We're here to obey God. Well, we're going to put that to the test this week. I'm not allowed to go to the church. That's what the Navy just told me. Guess what we're going to do? And the kids were like, we're going to church. And I'm like, you got it. So I saw, and this didn't last too long. There were some lawyers that went up and got that removed. But for 2 weeks, there was a whole lot of Navy people that were following orders. Like, I guess I can't go to church. And I'm like, I'm going to church, and I will make sure I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm going to let everybody know that I'm not afraid of this order. This is an illegal order. And because of all the discussion about the vaccine coming, I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen here. The military is going to mandate it. At first, it was just rolled out volunteer. Who wants the first ones? And then they began to use this coercion and manipulation, like, oh, you can't travel, you can't do orders, you can't do such and such unless you go get vaccinated. Or you can do it, but you need it. There's like these other repercussions. And I'm like, okay, I see it. They're turning the screws on this. And for whatever reason, I was just very quiet about it. I wanted to go loud, but it felt like the Lord was telling me, like, not yet. Hold, quiet. Well, I was still in San Diego. We got our orders to Hawaii. We got here in April 2021. And then by September, the screws were really coming on tighter and tighter. And then the actual mandate came out. And I went over to the rest of my command. I was at the training detachment down here in Hawaii. We trained the undersea SEAL team on all the things that they need to get equipped for before they deploy and do operations. And so I went to my entire staff and I was like, look, guys, I'm the third ranking guy here at this command. I'm the senior man. I will go to bat for every single one of you that doesn't want to get this shot. And there was about like 10 of them that were like, yeah, I still don't want it either. And I was like, I will be the guy that fights this. And then when I got issued with the orders from my officers above me, I let them know, like, right away, hey, this is not constitutional. There's some major issues here. I'm going to play the religious card, meaning I'm going to apply for a religious exemption because my religion teaches me that when I take an oath, I need to keep that oath. And I took an oath to the Constitution. And the Constitution means the free exercise of religion. There's a whole lot of other things, but my oath is to support and defend the Constitution. This goes against it. This order is not going along with it. So I'm not doing this. And they didn't really want to hear boo about it. Now, this is important. There's a nice little distinction here that I want to make for anyone listening. When you're enlisted, like as I was when I first came in, you take the oath of service, and it's, I, Drew Forsberg, swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me. I went through the enlisted ranks. I got to the rank of senior chief and then became a warrant officer. My oath as an officer changed because now it's to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, period. No more of that, and to obey the orders. When I really reflected on that, I am no longer paid to obey orders. I am paid to know when to disobey orders. That's my oath as an officer. That's what they are trusting me with as an officer. So I understood that this order was not legal and communicated that to the rest of the guys, as well as communicated up to the chain of command. And they were like, we don't care. What I did then was like, okay, I'm going to, again, apply for this religious accommodation. I put in all the right paperwork and everything else. But to them, they have like 10 more pieces of paper to fill out for every one piece of paper that I fill out. Nevertheless, the whole package went up, and they have a choice, the officers appointed over me. They had a choice to either endorse the package and say, yes, as this thing goes to DC, we think Drew is, deserving of religious accommodation based on his beliefs and based on the mission that we have. Can we accomplish this mission if Drew doesn't get this vaccine? And they said they're not going to endorse it. They don't think I deserve it, and their mission would be encumbered if I don't get the vaccine. Okay, fair enough, guys. Here's 30 days leave. I want to go on vacation now. And they're like, and I got an immediate call. Wait, what are you doing? Why are you asking for 30 days leave? Well, number one, I might get kicked out of the Navy tomorrow. So I don't know how this is going to go. So I might as well take the vacation spots that I've earned. I've got 60 days on the books. I'm only taking 30. Number one. Number two, based on your own words, what you guys just submitted to DC was I'm more of a liability than I am an asset. So I'll just do you a favor and I'll take off. You don't need me. And the officer over me right away was like, well, I do need you. Oh, you do need me. So, and he was like, you're right. I'll give you as much time as you want, like plan your transition, whatever you need. Just please don't leave me hanging for 30 days. And I was like, okay, right now I know I own all the cards. They need me more than I need them. And I was at the 19 and a half year mark. They had already tried to scare me. Hey, you're going to lose your pension. You're going to lose everything. The admiral wants dishonorable discharges for all of you guys. Like this could ruin your entire life. And I'm like, I don't care. I didn't sign up for a pension and a paycheck. I signed up to support and defend the Constitution, and you guys are breaking it. And I will see you in court. So that's how the genesis of all of that happened. Within a couple of months, there were several other SEALs on different threads that kind of like got together and reached out to First Liberty, and First Liberty was like, Navy SEALs need religious exemptions. Yes, we're fully behind it. And they were very strategic in understanding that, you know what the Navy is going to do? They're not going to follow their own rules. They're already breaking their own rules, and we're going to prove it. And that's how we were able to get inside one solid lawsuit. And then that became a class action lawsuit, meaning everybody in the Navy, if they filed for a religious exemption, they filed that piece of paper, they were protected. So we were the first ones to get across the finish line. Providentially, I'm always very stoked how the Lord worked it out timing wise, because I hit the 20-year mark, no kidding, the same week that my bosses and the whole Navy was notified, you need to treat Drew like a fully vaccinated individual. He can do whatever he wants. And that was also, I could submit for a 2-year reenlistment paperwork. So I still worked for the Navy for 2 more years, still got my paycheck, got across the 20-year mark, and they had to pay me a 2-year bonus for staying in. So I could just plan my full exit. I wanted to be a 30-year plus guy, go to like CW05, it's called, the top of the warrant officer ranks. I was on track for it, but I was notified that way. I felt like through the Lord, like, all right, your career here in the SEAL teams is done. Plan your exit. And I know the hardest part for me was just thinking, I'm going to miss the guys. This is a bummer. I came in because I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and I just wanted to serve my country, but I stayed in and kept re-enlisting because I just loved the guys that I was working with. And I just loved this whole community. I'm going to miss this. I'm here in Hawaii. I know there's some other SEALs that live nearby, but man, am I going to miss this. So when I was contacted by Jimmy May, the founder of Beyond the Brotherhood, and he told me what he was going to be building, I was like, I want in. And my wife was like, yes, you need this because this is your community. Early in my career, I became a Christian, and I realized even back then, my mission from the Lord wasn't to, go be a super operator. My mission from him was to witness and be a good testimony to my teammates in the SEAL teams, because no pastor has access to my platoon space, no missionary, no chaplain. I do. I am the ambassador for him. So I just took that responsibility very seriously for all these years. And I'm just really grateful right now being part of Beyond the Brotherhood, because I'm still working with my teammates, and I'm no longer working for those senior level officers who I felt completely betrayed the Brotherhood.
Drew, to place your principles over a pension with a family that's responsible for your ability to earn is a level of clarity that is uncommon. And we need to recognize that. My research, desk side, in prepping for this suggests that roughly 100,000 service members and families were adversely impacted by the mandated government-wide And I also recognized that they were trying times and we were walking into uncertainty. So I'd like to believe everyone was operating with best intentions as the eternal optimist, but I don't know. And we'll leave that to the audience to conclude. But 19 and a half years in an institution that's pushing a mandate that was difficult to bring clarity to is what I call an insurmountable challenge for most. And you stood to your convictions, which are most important. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the precedent that you created and the example that you set, which hopefully makes us a better nation, a better community, a better collective. I recognized before you went to the Brotherhood as an executive director, you spent some time healing. I call it healing before hiring. I'm curious, you checked in for some TBI and neurological checks. You got a full assessment, sound body, sound mind, that I can help others. What led you to that?
A lot of guys were helping coach me through this transition. And they were like, hey, there's these programs out there that help with TBI and some other things that you might not be aware of that, number one, you're qualified for. And number two, you have effects that you haven't been aware of. And, all of this time in my career, you're always thinking, what can I do to help serve my team? It's called team guy guilt. You never want to take any personal time off because you're like, I know this train is moving, and if I'm not part of it, then I'm not helping. So now that I understood, okay, well, I've got a plan for this transition. There's this program out there. Okay, let me apply and see what happens. I was a breacher instructor when I taught urban warfare, so I was around a lot of explosions as we were teaching the guys SEAL platoons how to get ready for overseas. And then a couple of years later, after some more operational tours, I was the demolitions instructor for the third phase BUD students. So I understood, okay, cumulative TBIs are another monster different from like riding in a Humvee and getting blown up. Yeah, that's a major TBI. But cumulative ones are like boxers. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but a lot of boxers kind of like slur, kind of like Rocky. They have something in there. Even like some of my smartest officers in the SEAL teams, if they boxed for the academy, they kind of had like a little bit of a slur. Well, those are those, cumulative TBIs to include like all of these micro explosions and all of these explosions that were around. So I went to this clinic in San Diego. It was a full month. I knew I needed it. And what they were able to kind of explain is, look, you're damaged. You don't realize it, but what we can kind of equate it to would be if you had a limp and now we're going to teach you how to use a cane so that you can overcome this limp that you now have. And it was really clarifying so that I could explain it to my family like, oh, this is why dad loses his keys. This is why dad can't remember things. So they were able to kind of like help guys build little crutches along the way to include little things of like dad's box. If you find my phone or my keys anywhere because I didn't hook them up or put them back, or my wallet floating around, you go put them in dad's box. Don't put anything else inside dad's box. Where does it live? Right by the front door. So these are like these little tools that they teach you in order to like overcome and get through these TBI issues that me and a bunch of other guys in my cohort all had. And then there was like some other games and little things that they could use to help you understand how to utilize better oxygen, oral posture, kids games to play with my kids so that also keeps the brain waves kind of like connected rather than letting them fizzle and stay disconnected. So these were some of the treatments that I utilized for the whole TBI thing. That was just part of, I guess, really every veteran's transition. You can go in a lot sooner, but much like other SEALs, I'm like, I'm going to wait until the very last minute because I don't want to leave the guys hanging while I'm still, active duty and still planning for longer career.
Fantastic. I believe without good health, there's no wealth, and that comes with self-awareness and self-care. So I appreciate that you leaned into let's get the system sound so that I can then move forward.
Well, another big thing that they kind of taught, of course, is utilizing your hobbies. And like I said, I'm already a surfer. I live in Hawaii. The wintertime is great. The summertime is flat. All right, what am I doing for the summertime? I do a lot of jiu-jitsu. that keeps my mind very engaged at the same time of being very physical, kind of like surfing. Like you're moving all the time, but you're mentally engaged because you're wondering like, where's the next second to sit, come in, where am I sitting? Am I deep enough? And you're kind of always like reading the terrain. Same thing in jujitsu. You're like, I'm getting smashed over here. Can I move my leg over here? And so while it's physically engaging, it's very mentally engaging. But then one of the other things that they taught us was like, okay, what other kind of hobbies do you have? And one of the ones that I developed, you kind of mentioned, was the regenerative agriculture. During COVID, the movie The Biggest Little Farm came out. And my older son, who's now 10, he has wanted to be a farmer since he could say the word moo. So I watched this movie with him. It's his favorite movie. Every year he watches it on his birthday, as well as several times throughout the rest of the year. But what it taught me was how to use regenerative agriculture, how they did it in a large scale farm in Southern California, and how to feed the soil and how that all comes in first. And I thought that was really great as a, as a Christian, as a creationist. It was like, oh, this is how God created everything. And if we harmonize what he's already made, you can have major dividends. And human nature seems to be, instead, we need to fight nature. We need to kill the prairie dogs. We need to kill the foxes and the coyotes and kill the weeds and kill all of these things in order to make what we want. And I was like really intrigued, like, okay, how could I use this? And then another friend recommended another movie. It was called Back to Eden Gardening. And it kind of taught about how to garden in your own yard with these regenerative agriculture practices. And so I was really getting excited as we were getting ready to move into our new house here in Hawaii. And my wife was like, please do not farm our entire yard. I don't know who you are. I don't know where this hobby came from, but please don't do that. And I was like, well, fair enough. What I'll do is I'll bite off a couple feet of the perimeter on our small property, like off the fence line, and I'll do all my little regenerative agriculture there. And what I decided this was, I called it edible landscaping, because I don't want to grow flowers and, botanicals. I want to go with things that I can eat, to include chickens. So that's how we kind of like got started with this edible landscaping Hawaii idea. And this also all happened at the same time when the mandate came out. And I was like, well, maybe this will be my fallback cash opportunity business if, everything gets lost and we got to figure out something. We'll lean into this. So that's kind of another way I spend a lot of my time teaching with my son. My kids are all involved. All the girls, they all know how to slay a rooster and clean it and all the other things that we do back here, as well as focusing first and foremost on the soil and how that produces really good tropical fruit for us. And we're not fighting nature; we're trying to capitalize on it.
I'm a big fan of biomimicry. I like using nature to inform my decisions. I think Mother Nature and what it's able to do season after season is remarkable. It doesn't have meetings. It doesn't have shareholders. It doesn't have 10K reports, but the creation of spring and summer and fall and winter is just absolutely remarkable. So when I learned that you're into regenerative farming, one, I had to read up on it. Like, wow, this is quite remarkable. Two, it's one better than organic. So I guess you had the best produce and nutrition out there. So I recognize that as something special. And then, of course, with jujitsu, I've got a lot of friends here in the community that have been involved in it for many years, and I appreciate the tactical and the strategy, as well as the physical side to that. And it all leans into your next chapter, or the chapter you're sitting in right now, Beyond the Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Quite interested in learning from you what Navy SEAL Commander Jimmy May set up and how your work serving as the executive director plays out.
Yeah, when I was trying to understand what's my transition going to be, one of the programs called the Honor Foundation, they were really big on getting on phone with people who have already been there. And I saw my good friend Jimmy May. We were trainers together when we were at Buds. Buds, again, is where the trainees come in to go through SEAL training. He was the executive officer. I was in charge of what's called third phase. Third phase is after first phase. First phase, they go through all the Hell Week, carry the logs, the boats, and everything else. And that's where you'll see a lot of the videos where guys are ringing the bell. Then they go into second phase where they learn about how to dive. That's in a couple more months. And then they finally get to third phase where they're going to get to blow stuff up, shoot guns, navigate in the woods for the first time. And this is kind of like, oh, now we're really getting into what we signed up for. We've proven that we're hard. We're proving we can be in the water. now what else does a SEAL do? So it was a really cool time for me. And I got to know Jimmy May because we would have like fight clubs, and he was also a surfer. So we'd go surfing together. And he was just always struck me as one of the guys that I really admired because as an officer, he was an officer, like a real officer. I'm now a warrant officer. He was just so identifiable, and he wasn't in it for his career. You could tell he was looking out for the guys at every step of the way. So when I saw that he was getting out in 2022, I was like, oh, that's because he didn't make the list for commanding officer. So for any SEAL officer comes in, they're 01, 02, 03, then they're a platoon commander at this 03 level. Then they step up through their career. And really, if you do 20 years, you're going to make 05. At 05, you get looked at to be the commanding officer of a SEAL team. So you got about 100 operators at a SEAL team. And it's kind of a big prestigious thing for any SEAL officer to be the commanding officer. He didn't get picked. And I didn't understand why. He had so much combat experience leading up into this. He kept getting hand selected for a lot of these combat deployments. And he was almost like an anomaly because he had so much combat experience for an officer. Officers usually have to spend a whole lot more staff time and diversity tours than Jimmy did. Why was Jimmy hand selected? Well, one, he was good at it, but number two, he spoke Arabic. So that made him a very hot commodity for these combat deployments. And at one point, they even asked him, hey, we need you to teach combat leadership to the platoon commanders and the platoon chiefs as they get ready for their deployment cycle. So he's been hand selected to teach that. He's got all this experience, but he doesn't make the list for commanding officer. Now, I'm a little bit cynical by the time I'm hitting my 19-year mark, especially with some things that I've seen through my career. Now we've got the vaccine mandate, and now Jimmy May doesn't make the list for commanding officer. All right, Jimmy, I know that's a headshot. So what are you going to do next? And he talked about he had been through Harvard Business School. He had a lot of good contacts there. He wanted to get into some business consulting. But he said he also had a burden to start a nonprofit to help our guys. And I was like, well, there's a lot of nonprofits out there already that help SEALs. So what's your idea? And he's like, well, I want to make sure that I leverage all of my business contacts so that our guys who are getting out, they've got an immediate handshake deal for a job opportunity or investors for their ideas. There's plenty of programs that send guys to schools and do these other things. But what I want them to do is get an immediate fast track onto their rightful place in society. Our guys are top caliber people. I want to screen them all for character. I want to make sure that we get good dudes who weren't just like, funny at the bar and could shoot straight on the range, and make sure also that they're not like, butt sniffers who always made their superiors happy, but never took care of the guys underneath them. He's like, I want a full 360 eval on every single guy that I bring in. One superior, one peer, 3 subordinates, and I want everybody to basically say the same thing about the guy. If it's a prickly pear and everybody says the same thing, well, at least his character is in line. So I want to bring in these kinds of guys. I want to introduce them to affluent business leaders and make sure that they're networked appropriately and that we translate that into their next mission in life. All right, well, I'm going to be getting out soon, I think, too. So how do I apply? It was my first question when he told me about his vision. And of course, inwardly, I'm thinking, what a great officer. He is not looking out for himself. He's got the business contacts. He can do great by himself. He wants to take on this additional burden to look out for his teammates. This is exactly why I love Jimmy May. And a whole lot of other guys that applied for the program were like, whatever Jimmy's doing, I want to be a part of it, because they can just tell he's that kind of officer, somebody who really he's a servant leader. He's not out for himself. So when I applied, I became what's called a fellow. They go through the package. They accept me as a fellow. I got to come out to one of the events, and he brought on another friend of mine from earlier in my career, a guy named Sean Murphy. He was the standing executive director. And a few months after I retired, they were like, you know what? We could use a little bit of help. And we know, Drew, you're kind of a nerd, kind of squared away, love the spreadsheets kind of thing. Can you help with ops on that kind of stuff? Just a part-time ops role. And I was like, this is perfect. Yes, I would love to be a part of this. I want to get my hands in some other opportunities, but this is a good part-time mission for me as I'm just getting out of the military, want to spend more time with my kids. So I did that part-time for a good year, got to understand like what their business model was, who their networks were, what they had already created to start and stand up Beyond the Brotherhood. And about a year later, Sean Murphy, the executive director, got a job offer that was like twice what he was making here as the executive director. And it was perfectly in line with his purpose in life. Part of the reason, or part of the program, when a guy comes on, they get this one-to-one assessment with a guy named Jay Harrison, who's a professional hockey player for 12 years, became a psychologist. And he's able to translate to professional athletes, hey man, you were able to take your mind and body to places most people can't go. So when you get done playing a sport, you don't have to go back to that sport and like be a coach somewhere or something. You can do whatever you want. Let's look at how God hardwired you with your DNA and see where you're naturally going to excel and find purpose. So for Sean Murphy specifically, he was like, Sean, you would be the perfect high school gym teacher. And Sean's like, I don't want to go back to school and be a high school gym teacher. And he's like, no. What we need to find you is a role where you are acting like a high school gym teacher. Lots of impact, lots of people, and helping them reach their next potential in life. Kind of what he was doing here at Beyond the Brotherhood. Well, that job offer he had right around his neighborhood was exactly in line with that. So I took a step back and I was like, that's kind of the perfect precedent here. In the SEAL teams, you do about 2 to 3 years at any given billet, and then you're going to move on and you're going to let somebody else fill that position in. So let's use that as the precedent for Beyond the Brotherhood. If you brought on full-time staff, you're looking at 2 to 3 years max, and you want to be moving up and out. You get a whole lot of experience here working with CRMs, the entrepreneur operating system, Google Workspace instead of all the Microsoft tools that we had in the military. So this is a really good opportunity for guys to really get networked, learn some new skills, and then move on and make room for the next guy getting out if they need this kind of like marquee experience of being a full-time staff with Beyond the Brotherhood. So that's kind of what we built, and that's how I got here. So when I was asked to step up as a full-time executive director, I was like, yes, but I'm only going to do this for 2 to 3 years. I'll find my replacement. I'll train my replacement. But I feel like that's what right looks like. If we're going to be a transition program, let's live it. So that's what we're doing.
It appears to me that you're more than just a transition program. You're offering executive recruiting services. You're offering skill-based development and assessments. You have your own selection process. So there's a filter so that candidates are brought in. And then I was learning about Zero Risk Skill Bridge Fellowship that gives a CEO a 180-day trial run on an elite operator. Can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah. So when I came on, even as a fellow, there's 2 programs. One, big DOD, the Navy calls it Skill Bridge. And then there's another one for the Special Operations Command called Special Operations Command Care Fellowship. They're very similar. They both offer months of you are getting paid by the Navy while you're still active duty during the last 6 months of your active duty time. You're getting paid by them so that you can work at another company and really get familiar with all of these skills. So what we did was we bring on fellows that are at that mark, and they can work here for Beyond the Brotherhood and get these same kind of skills that we just talked about. It's a shorter time span, but they get familiar with our events. They come out to our programs, get exposed to our network. What we also want to do was, all right, well, we don't want to be the hoarder of all this good talent. If a guy wants to come in and be part of Beyond the Brotherhood and work here and work with our tools, great. But what if they're interested in some other industries? So even when I came on as a fellow, Jimmy May had a good contact at pray.com. And he was like, Drew, I think you would really like working with them for part of this fellowship. Underneath them, you'll be part of like our umbrella, but we are the hub that are going to like get you over to pray.com. And we've done that for some other guys with other organizations as well. So they come under Beyond the Brotherhood during that time of fellowship. And we're very transparent with the fellowship program and say, hey, if we have another industry that's aligned and they file all the right paperwork, we're going to shift over, let's call him Jeff, over to you so that they can work for this other organization during their last 6 months. The whole program, both Skill Bridge and Fellowship, is all about that. getting the guys the experience they need prior to taking off the uniform. Many times that after they do that experience with said company, then they'll be asked, hey, you brought a lot of value here. We'd like to keep you on full time. That's not 100%. That's not the entire intent of the program, but it's one of the fallout ripple effects of having a good program like that. So a guy gets to prove himself and learn all of his skills and get some experience at it.
Fantastic. So live events, you got multiple engagement opportunities to get practical experience, to get the confidence built, the vocabulary in place, the muscle memory layered in. So that's fantastic. So now, Drew, you're sitting as an executive director. You've moved out of simply an ops or a fellowship role. And I'm assuming that a large percentage of time is keeping the not-for-profit with a positive operating budget at some level. And I'm assuming that that takes the form of grant cycles, board oversight, donor stewardship, this entire mission. What's that all about, and how does that play itself out?
For me, it's awesome as an education, like a full-blown on-the-job training education for like an MBA type experience. As a side note, I'm also getting my MBA. And what I'm learning to do is whatever I'm doing at Beyond the Brotherhood, I apply as my case study for my MBA. And whatever I'm learning at my MBA, I'm applying it to Beyond the Brotherhood. And now I'm getting all of this experience. Okay, what is this? What does a board meeting look like? How do you communicate with a board during the meetings, prior to and afterwards? What does all that look like? And one of the board members was very clear to me in the beginning, like, yeah, for a for-profit company, the CEO makes all the calls. And if he wants to budget out something, he just does it. And he informs the board later, and they kind of like advise and everything. For a nonprofit, it's kind of flipped. It's a little bit more of a, you're answering to a bureaucracy of board members. You're the executive director, which means you execute, and you're kind of more like a chief of operations on behalf of the board. So playing that kind of role of educating them, making the right decisions that are totally in line with me, and then checking in with them for things that are outside of my scope has been a really good education. But it's also been a really good experience in that they're kind of like my safety net. You know, these are proven business leaders that really understand profit and loss, budgets, finance. We've got some SEALs that really understand the culture and what we're going after. We've got another guy from Western Steel who understands all nonprofit formalities. So having this kind of network of a board behind me kind of actually helps me make better decisions because they're always there to kind of like keep me in check. And I know I'm not like, all right, is this just Drew's harebrained idea? Let me check with the board. I get a lot of good, solid advice from them, and then I execute later. When it comes to budgets, it's been really cool to work with them as mentors and then making sure that I'm accountable at the end of the year. All right, what is this going to look like? Hey, we budgeted for this, but this event is going to be a little bit more expensive than what you guys already agreed to. Now I got to come and communicate to it. And they're going to usually want a whole lot more specifics, not just then it's going to be a little bit more. Well, how much more? You know, and getting that kind of communication reps, I think is really important for me as the executive director to communicate really well.
Yeah, I recognize ROI drives so much of everything that's done, especially in business. And some of it can be measured and some of it can't be measured. Some of it is what I like to call love that can't be measured on the balance sheet, or grace that can't be found on a profit and loss. And some of it's very functional and specific. So
that's been the hardest part is, you know, when we looked at submitting for grants, they want to have all these performance measures. Well, how do you measure somebody accomplishing their next mission in life? A lot of times they're going to get out and they're still going to be on a lily pad for the first couple of years. And our organization's only been around for 3 years. So I don't have a whole lot of data on, all right, how many guys are at a long-term position and have been there for 10 years or more. That's this kind of thing that big companies want to know. Well, I've only been around for 3, and most of the guys that have come into Beyond the Brotherhood have only been out for that long or less. I can't really measure that. So those are the kind of like qualitative things that we're accomplishing, but I can't put them down on a grant application. And so that's been another, tough challenge. I've had to basically drop the whole grant writing program from our budget because I'm like, there's no ROI on it and it's too hard to explain.
It's difficult. I run into that with my clients regularly where they want to measure everything and they want to use metrics and AI to make things more efficient. And the conversation is consistently, well, some things can be measured, but perhaps they shouldn't be measured. And perhaps some of these investments are critical to creating the culture and to advancing the reason for being. Let's lean into what's happening in almost a little bit less than a week and why it is you're rolling from Hawaii to New York City.
Yeah, this is a big thing for us, are doing these events where we bring in some revenue to support the rest of the program. We've got a couple of flagship ones that have been established through the years prior. And what happened was in this past Veterans Day, 2025, Jimmy May was at Mar-a-Lago to receive an award. So was Bill Brown. And, SEALs can identify each other. They began chatting. And Bill talked about this New York City SEAL swim that he owns the intellectual property for. And he was looking for another nonprofit to partner with for 2026. And Jimmy's a visionary. And he was like, I think we can do this. And Bill was very transparent, like, hey, it's an expensive event, but this is really good for you guys. And he also, I really want to call out Bill for recognizing that, in the past it was for the Navy SEAL Foundation, and it's a great alignment in the mission and what they're trying to accomplish to help SEALs active duty and post. I'm going to a Princess and Her Frog dance tonight with my two daughters that the Navy SEAL Foundation puts on. But this event for them didn't have much of an impact other than, it aligns with their mission. But he knew that this would be a major game changer for a small nonprofit like ourselves. So this was why it was such a big opportunity that Jimmy really wanted to lean into. And it took us a couple months of discussing it and talking with other partners of who else might share this burden with us. And at the end of the day, by the end of March, it was just beyond the Brotherhood. And our board decided, yeah, we're going to take this risk on. So we've been pushing ever since. And Bill is like a force of nature to make sure that this swim actually happens. The relationships that he has with New York City and New Jersey, and the amazing amount of coordination that has to go into this is pretty mind-boggling. And that he's able to keep it straight says a lot about him and his mind. But we knew that if we could turn this into another major event for us in 2026, it could be really critical because it brings out our fellows, our SEALs that are part of Beyond the Brotherhood, and it's going to get them in New York. It's going to get them around other people that are very patriotic, veteran aligned, that are coming out to raise money for us as they're going to go jump in, the Hudson River and swim around the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. It is a really cool, iconic event. We have some events. One is early in the spring called the March to Stop Suicide. We partner with another organization where we're marching around the Daytona Speedway for 98 minutes and 8 seconds. They have SEALs out in front, our fellows out in front, wearing our stuff. Because why? Because we know that it's a kind of a taboo subject. Well, we've all lost a lot of solid friends to taking their own lives, teammates. These are not men that are mentally weak. There's something else going on, and we're not afraid to have that conversation. And that kind of like opens up the door for other people that have had relatives, especially veterans, to have that kind of conversation. All right, now with New York City, that's another big chance and opportunity for Beyond the Brotherhood and our SEALs to be out there swimming with civilians that want to be part of this whole mission that we've got.
Drew, this is awesome. I think it's the clearest expression of the mission of Beyond the Brotherhood in physical form. The open water swim from Liberty State Park through the harbor, passing the Statue of Liberty, I think is all very important. Civilians swimming shoulder to shoulder with active and former SEALs. We're not talking about a gala. We're not another golf outing. This is shared physical exposure. And at its essence, it's about proximity. You closer to the community closer to you, the mission being front and center with an opportunity to fundraise for the specific event and then hopefully have a halo effect where your story resonates larger and broader across different geographies and communities. So excited to have you. Stoked to see you, to see Bill and the crew in action, to see all the athletes and fundraisers congregating. Um, what an epic event, and very much looking forward to it. I hope the weather stays not too humid and good for us, but it's going to be an amazing, yet again, another epic opportunity to convene together as a group.
Yeah, and part of what Bill brought to us is not just a major fundraising event, but all of the relationships and partnerships that we've been able to create since leaning into this. These are like the intangibles that I would never get access to if we didn't sign up for that swim. So even being on this podcast and linking up with you, as well as talking about maybe some other things offline, these are all these intangibles that come from it, and I can't be more grateful for this opportunity. Now I'm just praying for really good weather so that everything else goes smooth.
Weather aside, it's going to be smooth. It's going to be great. Any opportunity to come together and celebrate doing better, being better, I think is important today more than ever before. Love what you guys are getting after, improving quality of life for anyone that engages. And I believe words have meaning, and that I take quite seriously. So thank you. Drew, we're about the top of the hour now, and love to ask you if someone listening would like to get involved with the foundation, make a contribution, highlight you for either speaking engagement or collaboration. How would you like one to go about doing that?
The easiest way is going to beyondthebrotherhood.org. Really easy to donate there, but what we're also looking to find are mentors and hiring partners. And so there's a link there. Right now, it'll go straight to my email with an auto-populated subject line. So if somebody wants to lean in, they're a successful business entrepreneur and they want to help a SEAL meet his next mission in life by pouring into them, understanding what their goals are, where they're at in life, and how they can succeed, then they can also click be a mentor. And same thing for a hiring partner. If people understand, hey, if I get a SEAL on my staff, they're going to do a whole lot more than a lot of other leaders because they've got a lot of experience to immediately leverage as soon as they step in through the door. You give them a couple of weeks or months to get spun up on the details of the industry, they're off and running. So that's another opportunity to become a hiring partner. And I'll set up a phone call with anyone that wants to click either one of those links, and we'll bring them on board for that.
We will include all this in the show notes as well for anyone listening that didn't pick it up quickly. But the mentorship sounds amazing. I think you'll get a wide community coming forward, and the hiring partners. I think that's what a unique opportunity to bring an operator in. I think it will be a quid pro quo where they're giving and getting at the same time without that expectation. Learn a new language, learn a new vocabulary, cadence for doing things. So it's not simply the individual receiving. There's also a give that happens just by being present. And that's the diversity of thought that happens when you get a pool of different people together pulling in the same direction. So excited to see how the event halos that out further for you all and what is held in store for you. Plus, I'm stoked to meet you, man. Looking forward to high-fiving you and the crew when you guys hit the deck.
Yeah, me too. And if anybody needs anything that's outside of those links, just emailing me directly, drew@beyondthebrotherhood.org. Send them right to me, and I'll make sure we get on a phone call and discuss whatever other opportunity they might see fit that would fit for Beyond the Brotherhood.
I got a meditation for you, for myself.
Okay.
I'd like to share with you grace. Grace for yourself, grace for your people, grace for the collective we and me. I think the world's becoming hard and harder every day. And I think just a moment of pause to say, hey, we're grateful for what we have, and we can all do better than yesterday. And so I'm down for that. I appreciate what Jimmy has created, Jimmy May, and what's coming forward from there. I'd like to shout out to Bill for connecting us. That comes with gravity and appreciation for the swim that's coming about, and friends, family, and cohorts. You're either in the fight or you're on a flight, but either way, we want to take the journey with you. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Drew, this has been real. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Miles.
A note before we go here. Drew challenged the military's vaccine mandate. That choice came from conviction, faith, principle, his own reasoning, told in his words. This show takes no position on the mandate. Not then, not now. We tell the story, you draw the conclusion.